You were taught that Viking medicine was crude and chaotic. That was a lie. What they practiced was colder and far more intentional, because healing wasn't about saving lives. It was about deciding who deserved to keep one. The wound was never the most dangerous part. What terrified the Vikings came after the blade was gone, after the bone was set, after the screams stopped, because survival did not depend on courage. It depended on whether the body obeyed the rules no one could see. Most people imagine Viking medicine as chaos. Drunken men, dirty tools, luck instead of knowledge. That picture is comforting, because it tells us they were helpless. They were not. They lived in a world where illness was not random, pain was not meaningless. Every fever, every swelling, every slow death carried intent. And if you misunderstood that intent, treatment became punishment. The Viking healer did not ask what hurt. They asked why you were chosen. They believed the body was a borderland, between gods and humans, between order and intrusion. When sickness arrived, something had crossed that border, and this is where the story turns, because Viking medicine was not built to save everyone. It was built to decide who deserved to stay. Injury was common. Broken bones from farms and ships, cuts from tools, crushed fingers, wounds that never fully healed. They knew how to clean them. They used warm water, sometimes boiled. They applied honey, fat, moss. Not because it was sacred, because it worked. But that knowledge came with judgment. If a wound closed cleanly, the person was strong. If it festered, something was wrong inside them. Weakness was not physical. It was moral. And moral weakness was contagious. When infection spread, the fear was not death. The fear was exclusion, because a body that rotted from within was a sign, a warning. Some healers tested wounds by taste, not to be cruel, but to detect sweetness. A sweet smell meant decay, and decay meant the body had failed. What followed was quieter and worse. The injured were not always abandoned. Sometimes they were watched, silently, waiting to see if the body corrected itself. If it did not, the community corrected the mistake instead. Illness without injury was more dangerous. A fever with no visible cause. A cough that lingered. A mind that drifted. The Vikings did not separate medicine from belief. They could not, because sickness did not come from chance. It came from attention. Something had noticed you. Fever meant heat where it should not be. Swelling meant blockage. Pain meant imbalance. They believed the body had flows, breath, blood, luck. When those flows stopped, treatment meant restoring movement, herbs to purge, sweat baths to force the body open, cold water to shock it awake. These treatments were not gentle, but they were deliberate, because a body that resisted pain might still belong. And this is the part people get wrong. Viking medicine was not primitive. It was selective. Children born weak were not always treated. The elderly were not always saved. Some illnesses were seen as endings, not problems. Trying to stop an ending was dangerous. Women carried most of this knowledge. Not warriors, not chiefs. Women who watched bodies change slowly. Who learned patterns no saga bothered to record. They knew which plants numbed pain, which stopped bleeding, which eased childbirth, which ended it, because birth was as risky as battle and just as unforgiving. When childbirth went wrong, it was not only tragedy, it was meaning, a sign that something in the line was flawed, or cursed, or finished. That belief shaped treatment. A woman in labor was surrounded by ritual, not comfort. Words mattered. Who stood nearby mattered, because fear itself could close the body. Silence was sometimes the cure, and sometimes silence was the verdict. Mental illness frightened them more than broken bones. A man who heard voices, a woman who stared too long into nothing, someone who withdrew. They did not call it madness. They called it openness. An open mind could hear what others could not. That made you useful. Or dangerous. Some were treated with isolation, darkness, cold, fasting, not as punishment, as containment. If the condition passed, the person returned changed, marked. If it did not, they disappeared quietly from stories. No drama, no explanation. But this wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how success was measured. Viking medicine did not aim for comfort. It aimed for function. If you could work, fight, sail, or bear children, the treatment worked. If you survived but could not contribute, the treatment had failed. And failure had consequences. Scars were not shameful, but dependency was. A man who survived an injury but slowed the group was not heroic. He was a problem waiting to happen. So treatments pushed the body hard, too hard by modern standards, because recovery was not optional. You healed fast, or you stopped mattering. They even understood trauma, though not the way we name it. A warrior who flinched, who woke screaming, who avoided battle. This was not weakness, it was imbalance. Some were treated with repetition, exposure, forced return to danger. Others were given roles away from fighting, not mercy, containment, because fear could spread. What followed was quieter and worse. There was no concept of universal care. No promise of being saved. Medicine was a privilege extended to those whose survival benefited the whole. That is the truth behind the myths. The Vikings did not trust medicine blindly. They watched it work, or fail, and they remembered. A healer whose patients lived gained power. One whose patients lingered gained suspicion, and suspicion was lethal. So treatments were harsh, decisive, final. They believed a clean death was better than a slow imbalance. And this belief shaped everything. Even the dead were examined, bodies inspected, signs read, to learn what had gone wrong, because death was instruction. Over time, this created a system, unwritten, unforgiving, effective in ways we do not like to admit. They understood hygiene, they bathed, they groomed, they cleaned wounds, because filth invited intrusion. They did not know bacteria, but they knew rot. They did not know anatomy and diagrams, but they knew patterns, and they were ruthless about enforcing those patterns. The myth says Viking medicine was crude. The reality is worse. It worked because it did not care about everyone. The body was not sacred. The system was. By the final years of the Viking Age, Christian ideas began to soften this. Care for the weak, compassion without utility. But even then, the old logic lingered. Because in the North, survival always came first. And here is the quiet truth. If you were injured among the Vikings, they would help you. If you were sick, they would try. But only for as long as your body proved it still belonged. Once it stopped obeying, once it resisted too long, once it threatened the balance, the treatment ended. Not with violence, with withdrawal. No more herbs, no more watching, no more words, just absence. That was Viking medicine. Not brutal, not ignorant, but cold. And it leaves us with an uncomfortable realization. They did not ask how to save every life. They asked which lives were worth saving, and they answered that question without hesitation.